Last year's second-round pick Tre Harris had a modest rookie season, but with Mike McDaniel in charge now, he could be ready to make that leap into a wide receiver too.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier. David, what do we got today?
Daniel, I think cornerback is a position that the Chargers should pay some attention to. How much attention? We'll have to talk about that. And should the Chargers trade up for Ioane? I don't know. That is a big ask from a theory. We'll get into that for sure. And Tre Harris had a pretty decent rookie year. Great blocker. Showed some signs. Is he ready to be the wide receiver 2 for the Chargers?
That is one of many storylines and overreactions we are getting into today, because it is Buy or Sell Tuesday, getting into the biggest Charger storylines and overreactions. And it's a good one here from Shane Patrick Kennedy, who says, buy or sell, Tre Harris will be wide receiver 2 by the end of next year, with the team clearly not valuing QJ highly given their willingness to listen to calls on him. Also, Herbert loves big wide receivers with good hands. David, is it an overreaction to think that we could be talking about Tre Harris as wide receiver 2 at the end of 2026?
No, I don't think it's an overreaction. I think that's what the Chargers want to happen. I think that they drafted him because they like the skills that he brings to the table, because they think, he is a receiver that brings a lot to the table, and a guy that, it took a while for him to try to find his place in the offense from a receiving standpoint, but he did a lot of the dirty work as a run blocker. It sprung quite a bit of runs for the Chargers, was very effective. They said, okay, he can help us there. We know that. Now let's try to sprinkle him into the offense a little bit more. And, you look out, and you look at the end of the season, 18 of his 30 receptions went for a first down. That sounds pretty similar to a guy like Keenan Allen, who was a first down monster. And I think Tre Harris exhibited some of those skills, and ability to do that, catching passes on third down, catching passes in a short window, being able to show a little bit of the spectacular, like with the catch, against the Kansas City Chiefs, which was a very, very big play in the football game. I do feel like he has the skill set to be wide receiver 2, and I feel like he has the offensive coordinator that's going to put him in position to eat alongside of Ladd McConkey.
Yeah, and a guy that could potentially help him, get through some of the flaws that he had as a rookie. I mean, wasn't exceptional as far as like getting separation and things of that nature, which is a big deal at the NFL level and something that has to be adjusted to as far as your releases and, how much you can get slowed down by cornerbacks getting their hands on you and how much that can disrupt the timing of the play and the offense as a whole. But I do think that Mike McDaniel is going to love the blocking ability, right? I don't think this is an overreaction for guys that are on the roster right now. I think the biggest kind of unknown right now is what the wide receiver room is going to look like once they enter the season. Because the thing is the one thing we've heard consistently throughout the offseason is the Chargers potentially being interested in other wide receivers. Now, a lot of people have taken that, especially with some of the rumors around QJ, as maybe an indictment of QJ. But it also, in some way, could be an indictment of Tre Harris as well. Like, you just don't know exactly how this new staff feels about a guy who obviously didn't have a huge season production-wise. So I think that as an outside guy who we saw make a ton of big plays in college, and that was kind of his, that's what he did. That was his MO, was the explosives. And I do think he's an underrated after-the-catch guy. I think, on some of those in-breaking routes and things like that where he can kind of body the defensive back and just get that kind of positioning, he is going to be a weapon in that regard and can be trusted in those situations. I think if this is the wide receiver room, right, like if it's QJ, Ladd, Tre Harris, KLS, would not surprise me at all if Tre Harris, is wide receiver 2 in that room. Will that be the room, though? That is the question that we don't know as of this point, because like something we're going to talk about tomorrow, the Chargers just had a meeting with a first-round wide receiver in Texas A&M's Casey Concepcion. So still feels like there's a lot of smoke there, and it could just be that because it is draft season and there's a ton of that going along. But I don't think that's an overreaction at all. I'm maybe some pre-draft bias for sure, but I'm very high on Tre Harris and what he could potentially be, especially now with Mike McDaniel at the helm. But let's get to this one here from Potluck Ton, who says, buy or sell, is it possible McDaniels can get QJ a Deebo-like season? He was responsible for him in San Francisco. Obviously, that's giving him a ton of credit. Some other great coaches over there deserve some of that as well. But it is something that we've thought about before, David, especially just as far as having an offensive mind that hopefully can use QJ to his best abilities and focus more on his strengths when getting him the football.
Absolutely. And we're talking about 2021 here, where Deebo Samuel had his best NFL season by an absolute mile, over 1,400 receiving yards in this season. His average depth of target was 8.6. But here's the kicker here, and here's why I feel very confident that, Quentin Johnston can really flourish in this system with Mike McDaniel calling the plays, is Deebo Samuel's yards after catch per reception in 2021 was 10.2. That is astronomically high. It was number one by a mile, and so was his yards per reception at 18.2. He was a yak monster. He was put into a bunch of different positions to be able to get yards after catch. And we know Quentin Johnston has that ability, and maybe not to that quite level. Obviously, Deebo did it better than most anybody. But in college, that's how he was used, and he did it at a very, very high level. His highest yards after catch per reception in the NFL is 5.7. I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be higher than that this season coming up in 2026 if he's a member of the Chargers. I feel very confident you could see him in the 7 to 8 yards after catch per reception area, because he has that type of talent. He just needs to be put in positions to be able to utilize the best of his gifts, which is turning into a running back with the ball in his hands after he catches that football. He didn't get put in those positions nearly enough in the past. I feel confident that Mike McDaniel is going to be able to identify that and be able to put him in positions to use that gift.
I do as well. I think it's obviously just hard when you're comparing guys, to other guys who have done it at the absolute highest level, right? And the thing is about Mike McDaniel and Deebo specifically is the one thing about 2021 was that's the year that he had a career high in carries. It was him as a running back. That is what made him special, right? He had 59 carries for 365 yards and 8 touchdowns that season. That is just a different kind of weapon used in a different way. And I just don't know if, even if someone on the show might have suggested lining him up in the backfield in years past, they plan on using Quentin Johnston in that way. Now, can they start him in the backfield, just to get him some easier catches and, some better matchups with linebackers, stuff like that? I hope they do, right? It's something I've advocated for before. But I do think it would look a lot different, I think, than Deebo Samuel, who's a thicker-bodied receiver. You still obviously had to get open to get in those situations, but now you have someone that can help create that runway for Quentin Johnston, where, last year, even when you liked kind of the way they used him, it was still most of the time, hey, let me just throw it out to him on the outside and see if he can beat his man one-on-one. It wasn't necessarily things designed to get blockers set up in front of him and let him actually kind of, stretch those legs a little bit, because when he does have that runway, he gets going very quickly. So let's do one more here from Albertan Secessionist, given Jackson Smith-Njigba's record deal, by extending Quentin Johnston or extending Quentin Johnston. What do you think here, David, quickly?
Yeah, I think the Chargers have all the cards here, and I think they are absolutely going to sell this. I don't think that they're going to extend him, at least not until after they see what he does in this fourth season. I don't feel like they're going to pick up his option, and I feel like they just feel like, hey, if he balls out, then, we can talk about an extension at that point in time. If not, then you let him walk, right? I think that's probably what the Chargers are going to do. That seems like the most likely plan.
I think when you'd have to build in kind of the contingencies of it, like not exploding into huge production for him this year, as far as the price you would give him on an extension, he would probably want to play it out like, hey, yeah, if you could extend him a couple of years, $12 million a season or somewhere along those lines, okay, maybe you could get somewhere there. But I think both sides would be more incentivized to let him play it out and see if he can cash in a little bit more. And if you're the Chargers, in my opinion, I just don't see Quentin Johnston having a season that's so huge and so monstrous that now he's just going to be way outside of your price range and way more than you'd be willing to pay him. Now, Jackson Smith-Njigba got $42.15 million per season. So we're not even talking about in the same ballpark right
Yeah,
there.
that's the most in the NFL.
The Chargers probably aren't going to pay Quentin Johnston $18 million for the 2027 season. So yeah, I think you just have to let it play out. He's improved a ton. Let's see where he can get to after this season and how he fits in this new offense. But we still have more to get into, including if the Chargers should be trading up for Vega Ioane. I know a lot of guys like him. I'm going to tell you why I don't think they should. We're getting into that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is a lot. Trying to book an appointment that's not the most convenient, sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth and wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to TurboTax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment. David, it's time to continue this Buy or Sell Tuesday, and thank you to all the everydayers out there for making these shows possible, especially in the off season where we really want to know what you guys want us to be talking about. And we have an overreaction here from Athir, in my opinion. It has a lot to do with the show that we put out on Monday about the other guards in this draft class. So let's hear what Athir has for us. He's a little upset with me.
David, Athir Buy or Sell Tuesday, an overreaction. The Chargers should move up ahead of the Ravens and get Vega and give up a first-round pick next year. It's worth it. He is that good, and we need him back. Your thoughts, please. Daniel, we don't have the resources? Oh, yes, we do, brother. Thank you.
All right, well, I mean, crazy for sure. But David, he specifically talked to you, asked you the question, do you think it's an overreaction? I mean, obviously, to me, a first-round pick is insane to use your first-round pick to move up that amount of spots, especially in a 2027 draft class. It's supposed to be loaded, right? Especially for one player, and it's never a sure thing. But as far as trading up for Vega in general, are you buying or selling that?
I'm selling it. There's absolutely no way that they can make a trade up for that because the positional value is not there when we're talking about an interior offensive lineman. To even think about trading up for an interior offensive lineman, they have to be a generational talent. And I mean Nelson. Like a once-in-a-decade type of player. And Vega Ioane is not a generational type of player. He's a great football player. No question about it. He's going to make any team that drafts him a better offensive line. I feel confident in saying that. But you cannot justify trading up, especially trading a first-round pick, to move up to acquire a player that is not of that stature. So absolutely not.
Yeah, I mean, look at the Falcons, right? They traded their first-round pick away for this season, ended up getting a guy in James Pierce Jr. who was very successful on the field, and now who knows what's going to happen to him off the field, right? But now, after doing that, and even if you get a good player, you end up not having the season that you want, and now the Rams end up, with the top 15 pick because you didn't end up with the season you thought you were going to have, so that ended up being a much more valuable asset than you thought it was going to be. And a loaded draft class in 2027, trading a future first-round pick to get up to go get Vega Ioane, I don't see it at all. Especially, I mean, to get up to 14, to try to go up 8 spots, or really you'd have to get to 13, right, if you're trying to get ahead of the Ravens. And the Ravens might not even pick him, right? It's not a position that has a ton of value. And if it's Quentin Nelson or something like that, maybe you have a conversation about it. At the same time, the Chargers are not a guard away. They're not a guard away for a Super Bowl. Like, it's just not. Like, you're trying to build a sustainable foundation to be, in contention every year, to be a playoff team every year. I don't think you do that by trading a first-round pick away to get an interior offensive lineman, especially after watching some of the guys we watched yesterday. Like, you don't have the resources in this draft. You have 5 to try to move up, right? If you are moving up at all in the first round, you're probably giving up your third-round pick. Now you have 2 picks inside. Now you have 2 picks inside the top 100 picks in the draft. Like, you need as many of those picks as you can get I don't agree with that. I would much rather trade down. I think trading a future first round pick, especially in the 2027 class. I don't agree with that. Not to get that player. It would have to be a generational player that kind of changes the trajectory and makes you a Super Bowl contender. And I don't think that's what he is. I think there's other guards in this draft where they would be just fine and could keep their other picks and have those be other impact players around your team that needs more talent to be a Super Bowl team.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at on it. But let's get to Roberto Flores here, who says, buy or sell. If the Chargers don't trade down from 22 to acquire more picks, they will instead trade down in either days 2 or 3 to acquire more picks instead. David, are you buying or selling this?
Yeah, I'm going to buy it. I feel like this is definitely a draft. I feel like with where the Chargers are, with the amount of picks that we just talked about them having, which is only 5, that this is the prime situation for them to actually trade back, which they haven't really done very often. And they haven't done at all in this current regime. They have only traded up to acquire players like Lab McConkey and Oronde Gadsden. They have not traded back for as much as we thought that he would. But at least, he's a fan of moving up and making trades and acquiring players and trying to do that, because that didn't happen a whole lot in the previous regimes. But I do feel like with this situation, with the fact that the Chargers need to get a few more cracks at it, and I think this is a general manager that you want to see them get more cracks at it for whatever he's done in free agency, for all we've bemoaned of him in that situation. I think we can all laud what he has done in the draft, which is find impact players up and down in both of his drafts.
So this is the thing. I do think that they would end up trading back if they didn't trade back in round 1, but round 1 is really where the juice is at. Like, that just is what it is. Like, it's just, you get the luxury tax put on it if you're trading up in the first round. Like, trading up in the first round is how you net yourself another top 100 pick, right? A day 2 pick potentially in that swap. That being said, it doesn't mean, you don't trade those later draft picks, but the later you trade, the less you're getting back, right? Unless you're moving back substantially. You're talking about late round pick swaps and things of that nature. You're talking about later on day 3 picks. Now, with Joe Ortiz, you'll take any extra dart throw, right? Because you have the proof of concept on your roster with guys like Kamani Vidal in the 6th round and 3 5th-round picks you love, and OG, Cam Hart, and Tarheeb Still, who have all been, NFL starting players at times in their career already in the first couple of years. RJ Mickens, another one. So, yeah, I'll take it even if it's not in round 1. But if you really want the most juice there, it's trading back from the 22nd pick to try to net yourself, a potential, one more crack at an impact player for you, someone that can more easily be counted on. And also you trade back and you get more ammunition to potentially trade back up later. But how many times will they trade back? This is the buy or sell from Xavier. The Chargers will trade down at least 2 times in this draft. I mean, I could buy it because I'm surprised they haven't traded back yet at all, right? And the Ravens front office, obviously in his time there, had a ton of history of trading back a bunch of times. Trading back twice might be a lot, but I don't think it's out of the question.
No, I don't think it's out of the question either, and I'm going to buy it, actually. I feel like they absolutely will trade back a couple of times. I think the first round is obviously where it would make the most sense to pick up one of those extra picks. And I think maybe later in the 4th round might be an opportunity for them to move back and acquire an extra late pick, which is something, that is not a bad thing, right? I mean, under Tom Telesco, you probably would not want to see an extra late round pick because they've been a lot of wasted picks. But with Joe Ortiz, he's found a lot of value in those late round picks. So acquiring an extra crack later on in the draft with this coaching staff, with this organization, with these scouts who have done such a tremendous job, like, I think that's what you want. You want more cracks at it with this group because they've been able to get a lot of value.
Yeah, and it's just something like the Chargers really just haven't explored as a team, right? Which I'd be interested in getting more picks. The Ravens front office, a ton of trade backs, including 5 consecutive drafts where they traded back between 2018 and 2022. In 2018, they traded back twice in that season. So he comes from a place that believes in that. If his free agency tendencies have taught us anything, right? He likes to be by the book and what he thinks is going to be successful. Now, they've moved up and been very successful doing it because the 2 guys they moved up for are Ladd and Oronde Gadsden II. But the Chargers haven't traded back in a very, very long time. There's maybe a late round one. I couldn't find it from Tom Telesco, But if there wasn't, I mean, 2017 and back, the last time was when they traded back from the number 1 overall pick and took LaDainian Tomlinson, and the Falcons took Michael Vick. So talk about something this team doesn't do. Trading back has been something they didn't do, don't do really, at least as far as my research showed. So it'd be interesting. I'm always a fan of more picks, more guys to talk about, more dart throws, obviously, but we still have more to get into, including if the Chargers could just blindside everybody and go cornerback in round 1. We're going to get into that and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house, it's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action, so when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. David, we still have some more buy or sells to get into. A lot of overreactions, especially, this time of year where this is an incomplete roster, and it's hard not to get a little bit antsy about whether this team is going to be able to feel like a team who's ready to make a run in 2026 with the stakes being as high as they are, and the Chargers really absolutely needing to win and win meaningful games in the postseason in 2026. How they will do that? It's hard to say because, last year, running back was a need. You didn't know if they would go with it in the first round, right? They took Omarion Hampton the first year. Everyone wanted them to go with a wide receiver. They ended up taking Joe Alt. They have been best player available, right? That is what they've done over the first couple of years. Omarion Hampton, the only guy they still had a first-round pick. Great on last year. He ends up being the pick. Maybe we have to look outside the box a little bit, David, for who the pick could be this year. This is from Big Daddy E, who says, buy or sell, cornerback could be a dark horse position for the Chargers at pick 22. Great offseason content so far. Appreciate the grind. David, that would be a dark horse, but I wouldn't put it past him.
No, I wouldn't put it past him either. I don't think that is likely, and therefore I'm going to sell it because of that. Because I like the way the cornerback room is constructed. I feel like they have quite a few guys in there that are either good football players right now or have played good football in the very recent past. So I like the way that room is constructed. And, at 22, there's really only, according to the consensus big board, there's only 3 corners inside of the top 25. It's Mansour Delaney, it's Jermod McCoy, and Avion Terrell of Clemson. Those are the only 3 guys that are inside the top 25 as far as the cornerback position. And, we've heard it from every single general manager, every single front office member say, you can never have enough corners. You're always going to be on the lookout for corners. I would be very surprised if they were to take a corner in the first round.
It's just not how they've allocated resources in the first couple of years in this regime, right? Look at what this, and that's why the interior offensive line part is so frustrating, because it's show us with your actions that you're committed to actually changing what's on the interior of the offensive line, because your actions at cornerback have shown you taking, a 7th round pick in Triquez Bridges, a couple of 5th round picks in Tarheeb Still and Cam Hart, right? And also, spending very small amounts on guys like Christian Fulton, see if he can bounce back, and Benjamin St. Juste, see if he can bounce back.
Yeah.
Dante Jackson. Now, can you have all those bargain guys and then kind of add a blue chip guy into that? And does that change the complexion of the room? Absolutely it does, right? It helps your pass rush as well. Obviously, those things work hand in hand. I get it. I feel good about that trio you're bringing up, but also Cam Hart, a very extensive injury history, obviously. Some of that head trauma, obviously, 4 different shoulder surgeries is a big red flag going into it. And it's just been up and down, generally speaking, right? It's not like he's turned into this point 2 years in where he's a full-time outside corner you feel good about starting and playing every snap of every game. He's not at that point yet. Now, you do also have Derwin James, who plays a bunch in the slot, but also you lost Benjamin St. Juste, right? You have injury-prone guys, or at least, you have some injury concerns at least in that room right now. Yeah, you could add somebody to that room. Where they do it, right? Would they do it in round one? I don't know. I mean, as a dark horse, sure. Like I think they need to spend premium resources on the defense. If you're going to do that in the trenches or at corner are the way to do it. The last time the Chargers took a first-round corner was Jason Verrett back in 2014, the one that got away. Obviously so talented, but if the right guy's there, they might do it. And in a draft as polarizing as this one, once it gets to pick 22, the Chargers might not have a lot of first-round grades that are left on that board as far as guys they could still take there. Maybe one of them's a corner. Maybe it happens. But, yeah, I'd say it's several spots down of what I think would be the most likely pick for them. But, like, that corner I think could be as much in play as guard potentially, just with how they seem to value those things. But let's get to this next one here from Chosen, who says, with all the focus on the offensive line, is our defensive backs group enough to compete in the AFC-NFC West next season, David, with some very talented receivers going up against the Chargers in 2026?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna buy that they have enough, but also the Chargers like to use a lot of different defensive backs. They like to mix and match. They like to play the matchups. Like they're very much, that's very much interwoven into the fabric of how they call the defense and the secondary, just in general. I'm very high on Dante Jackson. Dante Jackson was fantastic last year, was one of the better cover corners in the league. The tackling was a little bit of a concern, but
and he's in a contract year, as far as, the future for sure.
For sure, but he's a darn good player. Cam Hart, like you mentioned, a little bit up and down, but a lot of great physical traits. Tarheeb still, even with the interception numbers being down, his tackling improved. He did improve other areas of his game, and they just didn't really throw at him as much, as they did in his rookie year. They kind of learned their lessons. But I can definitely see a world where they give chances to, a guy like Nico Reed or Eric Rogers, a couple of young corners that showed some good things in the preseason and the offseason. And hey, maybe it's their chance to step up and try to take a role and add themselves to this cornerback rotation.
I'm very, very intrigued by Nico Reed and Eric Rogers for sure. That being said, right, those are two guys with no guaranteed money in their contracts. Like for them, what they did last year, buys you maybe a little bit of goodwill, but you had a different defensive coordinator, right? You have the same defensive backs coach, but still, like those guys will have to go out there and prove it all over again. They will be in camp. They will get an opportunity to do it. Now, can you put all your eggs in that basket? Absolutely not. They have to just kind of be, hey, look what we found here, right? Like, hey, this is something that's great that we found, but we weren't necessarily banking on that to happen because you can't. They're undrafted free agents, even if they showed some skill, especially in Eric Rogers' case, right? Multiple interceptions, but only played like half one really, really impressive game. And then we didn't see him again for the rest of the season. So just hard to tell on those guys, but I'm very excited to see what they can do. Let's get to one last one here from Big Geo. Says, buy or sell, Tuli Tuipulotu's next contract will be within the $25 million to $30 million range, David.
Sell. There's absolutely no way on God's green earth it's going to be any less than $30+ million. And here's the reason why. Jalen Phillips just got $30 million a year and does not have a single 10+ sack season. Not one. Odafe Owe just got $24 million per season. Just came off of a really good year. But Tuli Tuipulotu just had 13 sacks in 2025, and he's several years younger than both of those guys. He's only 23 years old. I don't think there's any universe that Tuli Tuipulotu is going to sign for any less than $30 million. I think it's going to be honestly in the $30 to $35 million per year range, given his production and given his age.
Yeah, but it's also 1 year of production, right? Like 1 year of being a double-digit sack guy at this point, right? The thing is like those guys for sure you can make that conversation for, but you don't have more sacks than him? Brian Burns. Who makes less than $30 million? Brian Burns. Nick Benito is a defensive player of the year candidate. He makes $26.5 million. So I think this goes back to like the Aaron Banks thing last year where Aaron Banks is out there and he's a terrible player and everyone's like, okay, well, now we have to pay Zion Johnson $20 million. I might have got Zion Johnson paid more than he should have, but the market came back a little bit and Zion Johnson got $16 million. Just because the Panthers are willing to throw a $30 million bag at Jalen Phillips doesn't mean that's the standard. And if you're the Chargers, obviously, with Tuli Tuipulotu still having a season under contract, there's no chance you're doing that. at $35 million on an extension right now. Why would you? There's no season that he could have that's having you pay more than $35 million. Period. You're going to pay him more than $35 million? You're going to pay him $37 million?
I mean, if he has another season where he's racking up 15 sacks, then what
choice are you going to have
with
He's never
the
had a
age?
season where he's had 15
No,
sacks.
I know that,
That's
but
the thing.
if they wait and they don't
sack.
extend him, right, then they're very much going to have to spend more money. There's no doubt.
No, I mean, the thing is, though, is the only guys that are even making that close are totally different defensive the player of the year type of players and guys who have gotten close to 20 sacks in a season, right? Or have done that on a per game basis. I mean, outside of the kind of outliers like a Danielle Hunter is obviously doing it based on reputation and things like that and getting a 1-year extension for $40 million. Like, you're still talking about him making more than Myles Garrett, who got extended last year, or like in that
Myles
same
Garrett's
area,
making $40 million a year.
that same ballpark. But I'm saying, like, that's what he would have to do to make. Why would you give him $35 million right now if you'd have to have a Myles Garrett season to make more than that, right? Like,
because if he has a monster season at his age, it's only going to get that much more expensive.
Nah, man, I totally disagree. I don't think there's almost anything he can do to get $40 million after this upcoming season. I mean, if he gets 12, 13 sacks again, for sure. You pay him $35 million now before he does it, and he goes out there and has 8 sacks next season. Now you're on the hook for a guy making top 6, top 7 money at the edge rusher position that you just paid before even making him earn it. So maybe that's what he ends up costing. If I'm paying him over $30 million, he's 100% going to go have to earn it on the field, because Nick Bonito has had 16 sacks in a season, right? He's getting paid $26.5 million. That's not usually what the contracts those guys get are. If you're making close to that, you've been in the defensive player of the year conversation at that point. Tuli's never even sniffed that. So to give him $35 million without ever being in that defensive player of the year conversation, I think would be absolutely insane. If you want to pay him, $27 to $30 million right now, 100%. I think that's
well, yeah. But
the
if
risk.
I'm Tuli, I'm not even negotiating that contract. I'm not even looking at it right now. I'm going to bet on myself because of my age. I'm going to have another monster year, and I'm going to make them pay me as much money as possible.
Outside of Jalen Phillips, there's nobody in the even conversation at $30 million plus that would even be in the same breath as Tuli Tuipulotu, what he's done right now. It's Max Crosby, it's Myles Garrett, it's TJ Watt, it's Aiden Hutchinson, it's Micah Parsons. Tuli's not sniffing any of those players to this point.
Right. Only one of those guys is 25 years or younger. All of them are all.
But none of
older
those
than that.
guys got that at 25, though. Like, all of those guys had to play out their whole first rookie contract and do it multiple seasons in a row to get that. To give him that before he plays this season, I think would be insane. I think from your point of view, yeah, if you're Tuli, you don't have to take that. But also, if you're Tuli, you don't take $30 million or $28 million and you go out there next season and have 9 sacks. Nobody's giving you $26 million next year after that, more than likely. So that's the risk you're taking, right? We're paying you based on, hey, this is what we're comfortable giving you right now. You go and blow that away, that was part of the risk, because we're also taking the risk on our side that if you go out there and have a stinker and have 7.5 sacks next year, we're not on the hook for $120 million over 3 years, right? So I think he could get there, but you're not going to pay him $35 million right now before he's ever had a $35 million
not now.
season.
I'm talking
That's
about
what I'm
after
saying.
the next season. Yeah.
We're talking about extension, right? We're talking about signing him right now, what you would sign him for. There's no way I'm giving him that money before he earns it, because he hasn't been a $35 million player. He can project that on his side. I'm going to have to see it for multiple seasons in a row. And that's the thing. You either sign him for a little bit cheaper right now and he can guarantee it and lock it in after what has easily been his best season, right? This last season was the outlier season for Tuli. 5 more sacks than he's ever had in a season.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean he's going to do it again, right? That's the risk you have to take. If I'm him, if I'm offered $28 million, $30 million right now, I am taking that to the bank, because guess what? I'm buying high on myself. You want to double down on it and you have a bad season, that's on you.
Well, he's
right?
young enough to where he can get another contract too.
He could, but the thing is there's one big giant contract, right? Like, you're trying to get to that second one. Yeah, if you can, because the thing is, David, if you do that, now you have to do it for 4 more years consistently for someone to give you that money again. He can bet high on himself right now and secure himself $30 million a year or a little less than that. I'm 100% doing that if I'm him. If he wants to bet on himself that he's going to have a 15-sack season, I get it, and then you can have those $30 million conversations. I don't think he's that right now. But either way, it's a good conversation, right? Like, he had that season last year, but his metrics are also at the point, just as far as a pure pass rusher, that I wonder how replicable that season was. When so much of it's effort sacks, when not a lot of it's just pure pass rush win percentage, we'll see it, right? And if he turns into that player, that's why if you're the Chargers now, you want to try to get him for a little bit less than that, just in case. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. The good news is we have a bonus show coming out later on today. Free agency grades on the defensive side. We talked about the offense, but I really like some of the key pieces the Chargers were able to bring back, and also Alvin Tomlinson. So make sure you don't miss it by subscribing or following for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listening wherever you get your podcast from, as well as finding the show every day on all of our social media, where you can also hit us up for buy or sell shows at Locked On LAC on Twitter, at Locked On Chargers on Instagram, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. If you guys want to be part of the Everydayer Club, you can do that now too for an ad-free audio version of the show. No ads, plus exclusive access to the Locked On Chargers Discord channel, which is a lot of fun. You can do that in the show notes and find the link there. Go to lockedonchargers.supercast.com. But make sure you guys are back here later for the bonus show about free agent grades on the defensive side. But until then, take it easy and go Bolts.